to the June meeting of the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority. Thank you for being here. It's good to see people in person, so thanks for coming. Our agenda today includes a final review of the financial plan, including a review of the adopted budget for the City of Buffalo and the Buffalo City School District. We will consider a resolution to approve the financial plan. We also have two proposed labor agreements to review, including a contract between the city and Local 264 and the district and the PCTEA. Additionally, the Audit, Finance, and Budget Committee met earlier today to review the final BFSA budget for the 2022-2023 fiscal year and the accompanying four-year financial plan, and has recommended this item be approved by the full board. Let's begin today's meeting with Executive Director Robe taking the role of directors.
Okay. Chair Olson is excused. Vice Chair Jurasek.
Present.
Secretary Floss.
Present.
County Executive.
Present.
Mayor Brown.
Present.
And Director Sanfilippo. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Our first item of business is to approve the minutes from the BFSA May 18th, 2022 board meeting. Directors will find a draft of those minutes and the accompanying resolutions in your board book under tab 2. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, second?
Seconded.
Okay. Thank you. Any discussion, any corrections? Hearing none, we can move to a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Our next item of business is to review the final adopted budget and four-year financial plan for the City of Buffalo. The city's 2022-2023 adopted budget was submitted to BFSA with revisions to the financial plan on June 17th, after a corrected amendment was approved by Common Council on June 14th. A BFSA report on this item is provided under tab 3 of your board book, along with the copy of the amended council budget amendments. Bryce will review this for us. Bryce, you're up.
Excellent. Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me a time to address the board this afternoon. I'll go over the city's 22-23 adopted budget and the corresponding 23-26 financial plan. The total estimated and projected revenue over the four-year financial plan was reduced in each year. Common Council initially reduced the property tax levy by 1.5 million or 1% down to 153 million in fiscal year 23. So this has a compounding effect over the 4 years of the financial plan. The reduction the property tax levy over the financial plan is $6.1 million. The total budgeted expenditures were also reduced by 1.5 million in each year to reflect the reduction in revenue over that time for a total of 6.1 million. The amendments to the corrected budget that reflect the Common Council's intent were approved by the Council on June 14th, 2022. It is noted the Common Council rejected the proposed user fee increase for the Refuse Enterprise Fund that was part of the original proposal. This chart here just summarizes expenditures and revenues over the four-year financial plan. Over the 4 years, the total financial plan is $2.3 billion, and these amounts do reflect the reduction of 1.5 million in both revenues and expenditures for each fiscal year. Next couple slides we have really identify some of the pieces that were addressed through the Council's amendments. There was a net increase of $722,000 in the City Clerk's office. This represents an increase of $765,000 for the Common Council neighborhood initiatives, which is offset by a decrease of $43,000 for personal service costs. In the police department, it was a net decrease of $156,500. This is largely due to the reduction in the elimination of the shot spotter technology in the amount of $155,000, offset by an increase of $8,500 for personal services. In the Department of Audit and Control, it is a net increase of $47,050. This includes a net increase of $32,558 for personal service costs for salary adjustments for exempt employees, an increase of $8,800 for services, an increase of $4,600 for supplies, an increase of $1,000 for travel. All other departments have a net decrease of $697,000. Large components include a decrease of $384,700 for exempt raises as compared to the proposed budget. There's a decrease of $292,000 for the elimination of vacant positions. And then there's an increase of $20,000 in the executive department for salary grades. In addition, under fringe benefits, it was a decrease of $1.5 million. There's three main pieces to that. $516,000 reduction under active employee health insurance, and then $500,000 both under workers' compensation and retiree health insurance. So this chart here is really a summary between the proposed and final adopted budget with amendments, comparing at the departmental level, the personal services, utilities. As you can see, there was a net decrease of $3,246 at the department level. And then under fringe benefits, you can see the remaining balance of $1.5 million to get us to a full reduction of $1,519,725. In addition to the modifications made by the Common Council of the General Fund, the Common Council rejected the proposal to increase user fees for the Refuse Enterprise Fund beginning July 1, 2022. This action places additional fiscal pressure on the refuse fund and will require additional revenues or resources in future years of the financial plan. The administration included $5.5 million of the city's ARPA recovery plan for a garbage user fee assistance program to assist the residents who were delinquent on their user fees. Utilization of the ARPA funds will assist in balancing the refuse fund in the short term. However, the city should increase the user fee in the out years to maintain a self-sustaining refuse fund and to generate revenue to address the outstanding receivable in the general fund of $12.4 million. Total revenue is reduced by $6.1 million over the financial plan due to council's reduction of the $1.5 million for the property tax levy. BFSA recommends that the city provide summary detail for both revenues and expenditures for each year of the financial plan on an all funds basis. And that is my summary on the city's adopted budget.
Bryce, what was the justification the council gave for decreasing the refuge fund? Do we know?
They wanted to protect the constituents and the residents of the city there was already an increase of the property tax levy. They just didn't want to place more of a burden on the city residents with additional fees.
Okay, so do they understand that essentially this is a paying for a service that we're providing and therefore it would have to be balanced in the out years? Or was this just, are they looking at it as a timing thing, or are they looking at it as an actual overall reduction going forward forever into the future?
I cannot speak to the council's understanding of the operations of the enterprise fund and what next fiscal year will bring.
I can add that the financial plan includes the refuse fund being the increase being reinstituted next year.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is really just a 1 year.
The administration does plan on reintroducing the user fee increase in 23-24. Yes.
And I mean, I just think that sort of makes sense when we're looking at services. The idea that you're going to pay for the services that you get is just a sort of standard budgeting process that I think we have to make sure that we continue to stand up for and say that it makes a lot more sense because over time, the only thing they're going to do is raise their property taxes to pay for services that some people use more than others. So it seems to me that that's just something we want to make sure that they understand as we go through all of this. I just have one other statement, and I think that while we're looking at the changes, particularly in health insurance for retirees and others, this makes this budget much more volatile and much more likely to have issues at the end of the year. If we look at the last few years' budgets, I think what we would notice is that they were very conservative, and that allowed them at the end of the year to adjust over time to make sure that they had a balanced budget and that they weren't using surpluses, or at least surpluses they weren't expecting to use, I guess is a better way of putting it. And I think that what these changes have done is make that much more difficult going forward for the city. And I think we should, let the council know that as well, that we need to think through this so that we're protecting the budget over time, not just the piece of paper at this point in time that we vote on it and approve this budget. But it does look balanced, as you've shown, so I see no reason not to approve it, but I think we do have some concerns. Sure. Yes, Andy?
Where is the city on its constitutional taxing limit?
They're below 50% right now. I don't have those numbers in front of me. From my May presentation, I believe they're at the 49%, so even with a reduction of 1%, they're still in that ballpark of roughly 49.5%. So they're using less than half of their authority. So
On that same note, with the modifications, where are we at on the tax cap with this year's budget, the levy?
they're still below. I
Still
mean,
below.
I don't have the exact percentage calculation because I didn't have the items that you could exclude when I went to run that number.
Okay.
No, they've got quite a large excess capacity available. You're welcome.
So the same questions as Fred did on the fringe element there. We feel it was a conservative number off the bat. Is that why it was chosen as an area for the reduction?
The administration felt it was a conservative area they can target. Mind you, the budget is based on budgeted positions as if they were all filled, same with the fringe benefits. So as we've seen, the city has not been able to hit a 100% filled rate, so there is some leeway there.
Same for so many of us. And then on, when we last discussed, it was important for a July 1st revision to the city's American Rescue Plan plan into Treasury to be submitted. Do we have a copy of that yet? Has it been reviewed, or?
We do not have a copy of that yet. It
Okay.
has not been submitted.
Okay, but if I recall, that was a key part of your analysis for it being balanced, correct?
That
Yeah.
was, and that's in the draft resolution, that your approval is contingent on
Upon that,
the
okay.
subsequent
Right.
approval of that.
Okay, got
We
it.
have that in writing.
Okay.
At least in our writing.
Yes.
That is, to say approval is contingent.
Yes.
But exactly in that vein, in that domain, it has not been submitted yet. As far as we're informed, what is the decision turnaround on something like that? Is it 60 days after it's submitted?
I'm not aware of what, it gets submitted to the U.S. Department of Treasury. I don't know what their backlog is on that, to be off the top of my head. I could have some conversations with some folks to see if I can get a better idea for that. Common Council needs to approve it before it's submitted, so
Right.
that should happen before the end of June.
I could just say, as someone who's dealt with the portal and this process directly, in my experience for the first round, Treasury, I think, approved them within about 30 days. It ticked over from submitted to approved, and it's a portal they use. For this new round, I don't know how many municipalities are choosing to submit new plans, so
Right.
it could be a faster turnaround time because there's less volume for them to go through.
Sure. Fewer
Yeah,
being processed.
yeah, but Congress at least allocated significant funding to Treasury OIG to do all this stuff, so I know they've been staffing up for the review process. So I think they're in an okay place for clearing through these relatively quickly.
All right. But even so, Janet, could you get a sort of a soft, non-binding estimate? Because if it were slow, then the nightmare for us would be, and for the city, would be, no one knows until October 10th.
Yeah.
If the money is, if the revised plan is accepted. So
Okay.
I'm belaboring the point. If you could get at least a soft estimate on, we understand we don't know how long from today it will be until it's submitted. That's a local question. But if you could get a soft answer on the other end, the approval end.
Will
Thank
do.
you.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion?
So based on some preliminary numbers I've seen for the assessment growth across the county, including the city, and the new equalization rates tentative for '23, I feel more confident there will be a positive variance on property tax levy, so I feel a little extra comfortable with this budget despite the decreases, so.
Great. Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Anyone from the gallery want to? Okay, great. We will defer the vote on the financial plan until after the discussion of the district's adopted budget. The second item of city business is to review the proposed labor agreement between the city and the American Federation of State, Local, and Municipal Employees, AFL-CIO, Local 264, representing the blue-collar employees of the city of Buffalo. Materials related to this matter are provided under tab 4 in your board book. Bryce, can you review the contract for us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, the labor agreement material for Local 264 is under tab 3, right after the adopted budget piece.
Sorry about that.
Nope. We have another labor contract under 4, so. All right, just a little background on this group. We are reviewing a memorandum of agreement between the city and Local 264, the blue-collar folks. In fiscal year 21-22, there were 606 budgeted positions on an all-funds basis. This unit represents over 100 different titles. As of March 31, 2022, 525 positions were filled with the average salary at $39,042. There was a vacancy rate of 13.4% at that time, roughly 81 FTEs on an all-fund basis. In the fiscal year 23-26 budget financial plan, initially there were 612 budgeted positions, but per the amendments, I believe 3 of those positions were reduced, so it will be more like 609. Employees are funded through the City of Buffalo's General Fund, the Refuse Enterprise Fund, and the Water Enterprise Fund. This MOA was ratified by membership on February 1st, 2022, with a vote of 222-9. After our review and comments, the MOA will be submitted to the Common Council. The previous CBA expired on June 30th, 2019, and the current proposal would cover the period of July 1, 2019 through June 30, 2025, which is the 3rd year of the current financial plan. So our analysis carries these costs all the way through the 4th year of the current financial plan. Salary increases are effective back to July 1, 2019 for covered employees, and various title upgrades are effective back to July 1, 2020 for eligible employees. So the first slide we have here is just a breakout by tier of the workforce. As you'll see, the 2 largest tiers are Tier 4 and Tier 6, which make up roughly 467 out of the 525 employees as of March 31st. It also provides average age of the employees and average years of service by each tier. Of the 525 employees, the average age was 47.8 and the average years of service was 11.4. So as we see more employees retire from tiers 2, 3, and 4, they will eventually be replaced by Tier 6 employees, starting in a lower salary step, as well as contributing more towards their employee retirement system contributions, the pension contributions. So you'll see a shift in the cost in the long term there. So the wage agreement includes 2% salary increases on July 1, 2019, July 1, 20, and July 1, 21. The salary upgrades for specific titles go into effect July 1, 20 after the 2% increase. Then there are 3% annual increases on July 1, 22, 23, and 24. There's also an increase to the longevity payment by $300 to mirror the local 650 MOA from 2 years ago, I believe. There's also an increase to shift differential from 60 cents an hour to $1 an hour. There's an increase to the perfect attendance incentive, increased vacation leave for those hired after 12/1/08. So this way, currently on the previous MOA, they had reduced the amount of vacation that could be earned by new hires after 12/1/08. So you created 2 tiers for vacation. This actually addresses that and makes it that all employees can earn the same amount of vacation over their employment. The total increase over the 6 years for this MOA is 17.4%. Additional changes include an increase of $250 a year for the 105H. There's an increase or a change to health insurance coverage. It used to be 6 months before an employee could receive health insurance. Now it's 90 days. There is a health insurance generic mandate. Those details are in the memo. There's an increase of $75 a year for the work boots, foul weather gear for employees. Addition of Juneteenth as a paid holiday. Increase to the sick leave. Employees are able to sell back up to 200 days as opposed to 180, and the ratio goes from 1 to 3 to 2 to 5. And then there's also enhancements for management and scheduling employees specifically for mandated overtime and some of the protective services for the emergency dispatchers. All right. So a few highlights on the prescription drug coverage. Employees are now required to utilize generic prescription drugs when available on all new prescriptions after ratification. The provision will extend to employees who retire after ratification. Employees who select non-generic brand will pay the difference in retail costs and the name brand copay. Generic maintenance medication will be dispensed in 90-day supplies through the mail. If there is no generic equivalent, members pay only the indicated copay. And there's a clarifying language to the contract to define what is considered newly prescribed medication. This is a breakout of the salary enhancements for specific titles that went in effect July 1, 2020. Mind you, these only affect those at the top step. So it's an increase of $1,000 for tow truck operators, $1,500 for carpenters, electricians, plumbers, welders, water service workers, assistant filtration plant operators, and filtration plant operators, $2,000 enhancement for exterminators, $5,000 for senior public safety dispatchers, and then a $6,000 enhancement for cell block and senior cell block attendants. And part of what was occurring here is individuals, especially on the cell block side, would complete their training, get time on task in the position, and then basically go to the county or the state, and so the city was paying for the training and the employees would move on. This is the longevity chart. As I mentioned, it's an increase of $300 compared to the current one. So in year 5, it goes from $400 to $700. In year 25, it goes from $1,700 up to $2,000. Now, there were no significant changes to the health insurance outside of the generic mandate. Currently, there's 3 tiers of health insurance based on hire date. So employees hired before December 1, 2008 have access to 3 different plans. If the employee chooses the 204, they receive it at no cost. If they choose a higher plan, they pay the difference. I believe there was only one person actually enrolled in a plan that was not the 204, so not many individuals are pursuing the other 2. And then we have the breakout of what the 105H is. For a single individual, it's $520. For family, it will be $1,000. For employees hired after December 1st, 2018, but prior to June 14th, 2016, they'll contribute a fixed amount The estimated amount for fiscal year 22-23 will be $192 for a single or $501 for a family. And then after June 14, 2016, the employee contributes a fixed amount, and then it's the same ratio, yet when they reach the top step, they shall contribute 10% of the premium. What we have here is a breakout of the 3 available plans and what the premium cost is based on single and family. Next slide is retiree health insurance and the employee contribution portion. Once again, if an individual is hired pre-12/1/08 and they have 20-plus years of service, there is no cost to them in retirement. 15 to 20 years, they contribute 10%, 10 to 15, 20%. Less than 10 years of service, no coverage at retirement. And then once you get into that period between December 1st, 08 through June 14, 2016, 20 years of service, the employee pays a fixed amount based on either single or family. 15 to 20 years, it's a fixed amount plus 10%. And then between 10 to 15 years, it's that fixed amount plus 20%. Retiree health insurance through the city is not provided for anybody hired post June 14, 2016. So the next several slides we have are going to be the general fund, the refuse enterprise fund, and the water enterprise fund. It's a detailed breakout. These charts are in the memos. It just shows over the life of the contract and through the end of the financial plan what the different increases and how they impact the city. So at the end of the current financial plan, it will be a total impact of $20 million. I would like to note that the retroactive and current year costs have adequately been budgeted for or accrued for on the retro. Prospective costs were included in the 23-26 financial plan. As I mentioned, this is the refuse fund over that time. Total impact by the end of the fiscal plan is $6 million. Once again, the retroactive and current year costs have been adequately budgeted for. Prospective costs were included in the 23-26 financial plan, but as we noted during our discussion on the adopted budget, one of those assumptions is that the user fee for the refuse fund will be increased next year. So if the fee is not increased, there be additional resources need to be identified by the city on how to fund operations in the enterprise fund. And third one here, we have the water enterprise fund. Total impact over the financial plan, including retro, is $2.2 million. Once again, they've adequately budgeted for the retro in the current year and identified resources through the 4-year plan to finance operations. All right. The retroactive costs associated with this contract were accrued for in prior years and will have a minimal financial impact on the current fiscal year for the general fund and no expected impact to either enterprise fund. The only impact coming out of this current year is several of the upgrades were not accrued for in the prior year. It was just not known as a variable. However, the city has identified adequate resources in the current operating budget to address those salary upgrades. Cost increase for the current year will be funded with current year resources, primarily a salary adjustment line and vacancies. And then prospective cost increases for general fund have been included in the 23-26 financial plan and are intended to be funded through increased revenues. And then prospective costs have been addressed in the water enterprise fund. Prospective costs were also included in expenses of the refuse enterprise fund. The administration plans on utilizing $5.5 million in ARPA funding over the 2023-2026 financial plan to address delinquent payments from residents. There is an intent to increase user fees in 23-24. Any cash deficit occurring in the refuse fund is borrowed from the general fund. In the event of insufficient resources, the liability to the general fund will increase and or operating transfer could be necessary. The refuse fund has a long-term payable due to the general fund of $12.4 million as of June 30th, 21. And BFSA recommends the city develop a formal plan to address that long-term receivable in the general fund. The city has demonstrated the contract is affordable as long as fees are increased as planned. External economic risk with respect to inflation and a potential recession would add to fiscal pressure if inflation continues and/or a recession occurs. That brings me to the end of my presentation.
All righty. Any discussion?
We're just happy to see those cell block salaries increase. I remember when the cell block first opened, so they were no longer pre-arrangement with county holding center, but with the city. I saw those salaries and I was like, oh, I know how much the Teamsters at the holding center make, and I was a little worried about that. So I'm glad to see they're getting an appropriate bump there.
And I think that this contract generally, if we're looking at contracts that are being settled in the last few months, have those past 2% wage increases, but 3% going forward. So this looks like it's comparable to other labor contracts across the state, and whether it's a county or a state or a local municipality funding the contracts. So I would think that it's well within line of what we would have expected, and given that the employees ratified it at such a high rate, I would think that this bodes well for the city going forward, that both sides should be served by this contract. So I'm happy to approve this one.
And as you can see, several of the proposals actually mirrored the local 650 that was settled 2019, prior to the impact of COVID. And the intent was for this CBA to come over at that time, but due to the pandemic and I believe a pause on negotiations, it was delayed till this past year.
Good. More discussion?
This is a very large employee group. Just by your own knowledge of the numbers, was it about 2 out of 3 employees? More or less.
It's in line with police and fire. I mean, police is about 812, fire is 742, so it would be the third largest group on all funds basis. So roughly a third when you bring in the whole funds.
A third,
Of
all
the total.
employees aggregated.
Correct.
This historical question, given the number of employees covered by this collective bargaining agreement, just refresh at least my memory. Were these employees working out of contract, or was this sort of a more orderly calendar transition?
They've been out of contract the past 2 years.
Two years.
So yes, it expired on June 30th, 2019, and the intent was to get something settled within the 19-20 fiscal year, but due to the pandemic,
Sure,
negotiations were paused.
sure.
So they did work out a contract for 2 years, and at this point, it's almost 3 full years by the time it hits council's desk.
But again, that delay is the result of extreme duress.
Correct.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Andy? Okay, thanks. May I have a motion to approve the report and the findings as discussed today?
So moved.
So moved. Second?
Seconded?
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. We'll move on to the district items now then. The next item is to review the final adopted budget and four-year financial plan of the Buffalo City School District. The district approved the budget on May 18th with minor changes. The BFSA report on this item is provided under tab 4, if I've got that one right. Jeanette, are you going to do this?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
Right, I just don't see the presentation. All right, there we go. So, as a refresher, the financial plan for the school district is balanced with $90.3 million of fund balance to balance operations, This is the first plan submitted to BFSA that included an estimate for unsettled labor agreements, which was a significant change from prior years. The cumulative amount for the unsettled labor agreements included over the financial plan is $131.4 million, and that is directly attributed to the budget gap of $90.3 million that is filled with the use of fund balance. I'm sorry, go ahead. The question was, after the use of fund balance, how much does that leave them? Thank you. Thank you. Nate Kuzma responded about $250 million. Correct. Okay. You're welcome. There's a risk to the plan that we identified when we reviewed the financial plan last month as it relates to revenue estimates that are based on enrollment. The plan does assume a return to pre-pandemic levels, and if there's an adverse change, of course, in that assumption, there would be even a more urgent need to develop a plan to eliminate the budget gaps, which was not included in this particular financial plan.
If I can hop in on that real quick.
Yes.
And my answer for you guys. So with the SCOTUS ruling from Tuesday regarding school choice programs being required to pay for parochial schools as well, do we have an analysis of is that going to impact our local districts? Or, for instance, can a family select instead of a charter school, a parochial school? And is that going to lead to, obviously it could be pretty significant problems there?
Right.
I haven't done that.
Okay. Okay.
Do you know how many students are in parochial schools at this time? About?
No, I know how many are in charter, which is
Right.
9,000, which we do track, but I do not know the number, and the number that are city residents.
Right.
That attend parochial schools. I don't think we've ever analyzed that.
Do you have any understanding, and this is an unfair question, so take it as an unfair question of, yes, 2 days ago, we have the SCOTUS ruling, but do we believe that that's going to be part of state funding, or do you think that it's going to have to come out of the district's budget? Has anybody talked about any of this?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I've received a lot of unfair questions in my life. Usually I say I'll look into it, and we can get back, but I really have not done enough research yet to answer that question.
Well, given everything else in COVID, we just, need to pile more
Yeah.
work on you, so, sorry.
No problem.
And how fresh is this ruling this
This
week?
was
Tuesday.
Tuesday morning. It was
Yeah.
a case from Maine that essentially said their school choice program requires them to also fund, I guess, parochial or any schools of any religion.
Any school,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, should we wait for, the district obviously will model that. Should we wait for them to model it, or should we do our own rough model?
Well, I don't think we
I know we don't
can
have
change
that.
the budget and everything. They need to have this approved. But obviously, it's something, why don't we say we should have a discussion about it?
All
I
right.
think that's a better way of trying to deal with this, and we can
All right.
go from there,
All right.
if that's appropriate.
Yeah, no ill will towards the district. We're just, it was an immediate concern when I saw
Well,
that come out for
and-
many reasons, honestly.
Well, and
but-
it's going to be an interesting question with the 2% property tax on school districts in the suburbs. We're very different than Maine in that respect on how you would have to fund this. So there could be lots of different ripples through all of this as we go
Sure.
forward.
Sure.
Yes. Sorry, Jeanette?
No, you're.
Yeah,
that's
sorry about
great.
that.
No, that's
Tangent.
great. So this is a graph that Nathan put this together to show the historical staffing and the enrollment figures since 2016-17. And he highlighted in red the years that were directly impacted by the pandemic. So you can see a significant drop it's about 7.3% of enrollment from 2019-20 to 2020-21. It continues through this year, at least from a, projection number. And then the financial plan projects it to increase to pre-pandemic levels for the 4 out years of the financial plan. The drop-off in FTEs, there's a jump between 2022 and 2023 in positions that's directly attributed to the ARPA funding that's available to them. And then when it's no longer available, 2 years later, you see those positions come off, and that's the drop.
How was the forecast done for the number of students? Did they look at the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds that'll be entering the school district that are in the city, or is there some other way that they estimated that from census?
One of our recommendations that we had in the report for the financial plan was that they consider a formal study. They are internally generated right now.
Okay.
Okay.
And the only issue is that we know that there was an undercounting in the census, particularly in poorer areas of the city, that might have an impact on the number of students. So I'll just point that out as we start to look at some of these calculations, that we may want to take that into consideration so we're not surprised.
For the adopted budget, there were no changes made to the general fund revenues from what was discussed at our May board meeting. In total, budgeted appropriations for 2023 remain the same, but there's some categorical changes that are minor in total, or minor individually, no impact in total. There's no impact on the out years of the plan. It's just changes that affect 2022-23 only. As a refresher, it's just a summary of the financial plan. Again, the deficit for the 4 years is estimated at $90.3 million. That's a conservative estimate. The categorical changes from the proposed budget or the draft budget to the adopted budget are minor. Most of them are well under 1% change. The only significant item on a percentage basis is the reserve for contingency, which represents a reallocation of dollars from that reserve to primarily supplies and miscellaneous of, actually that's primarily it's a 1.1 million increase in supplies and miscellaneous. Our conclusions over, I guess, this specific analysis, we had the separate conclusions on the overall financial plan that we reported on in May, is that the adopted budget, it's now final. We expect it to be adjusted not until July 1st when encumbrances are added to the budget, and the 2022-23 budgeted staffing has not changed significantly. It reflects the final school-based budgets that were submitted after the proposed budget was created. Not a lot to talk about there. It was a pretty, the changes were very minor when you're looking at over $1 billion budget, very small changes.
Well, and the fully funding from the state now after the court cases is presumably helpful as we go on. I guess a question for the school district is, given all of the terrible issues that have happened over on in East Buffalo, are we looking at any special changes or any funding that, we may want to propose or discuss that obviously the school district may need? Are there grants or other things that we may want to help you with or at least discuss?
I don't know if I'm the best person to speak on that, but I'll do what I can. I know the federal government, the Senate, has just passed legislation that to targeted funding, more social workers, counselors, psychologists, school boards, as well as
But if there is additional need, I'd hope you would come here, and if we can be a mouthpiece for you to push for some of these things as appropriate, we would, like to do that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. Anything? Yeah.
May I ask
Yes.
a small question which references a previous discussion? So one of the most important indexes is for planning, budget planning, is student head count. And I think Mr. Pritchard, there's a question here. Mr. Pritchard told us that head count is determined at the end of a school year, fiscal year, based on how many are still in their seats. That's what I recall him saying. Or is student head count, total enrollment, a projection that remains stiff all the way across the year? Or
The official count is taken usually in October, on Beds Day, it's called, and that is.
what day is
our-
it called?
Beds
Beds
Day.
Day.
Beds Day.
BS. And that's the date that our official enrollment count is registered for.
And that's what determines the state allocation for
That is
the
correct.
release of dollars from the state
That is correct.
first week in October.
It used to be, yes, that's what it's historically been.
All right. And so the student, again, that first slide, a projected student head count. The driver inside that projection is last year's? I understand it's a trend line. I understand you're
Yeah,
looking at lots
That
of.
would be the best numbers that we would have.
Okay.
This past October.
So you, okay, and you pattern on other inputs too, not just last October.
That's correct.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, statements? Jeanette, do you have anything else?
Nothing else.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll consider the resolution to approve the financial plan as a whole. A draft resolution is provided under tab 3 of your board book. At our meeting held on May 18th, we reviewed the individual financial plans of the city and covered organizations as submitted to BFSA on May 2nd. Today, we reviewed the final adopted budgets and financial plans of the city and the district. There are no changes to the budgets or plans of the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency or the Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority. The draft resolution includes the determination that the 4-year financial plan is complete and compliant with the requirements of the BFSA Act. This approval is contingent on the appropriate filings and subsequent approval of the revised City of Buffalo Recovery Plan. May I have a motion?
As moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of approving the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The resolution is passed. Now we can move on to the final district matter. The interim superintendent submitted a proposed labor agreement between the district and the Professional, Clerical, and Technical Employees Association, PCTEA, representing the white-collar employees of the district. Materials related to this matter are provided under tab 4 of your board book. Jeanette?
Thank you. So the current labor agreement, it expires this upcoming June 30th. The proposed agreement would be effective for 4 years through June 30th of 2026. It covers white-collar employees as well as security officers. There is approximately 74 to 79% of employees are funded by the general fund. That percentage changes as ARPA funds run out in year 3, and that number shifts with a more heavy percentage in the general fund. Upon ratification of the labor contract by Board of Ed, there will be a signing bonus provided to all employees of $1,000. That's expected to occur this fiscal year. All remaining costs begin on July 1st of 2022, which is the next fiscal year. There are no contractual savings associated with this labor agreement, but it's important to note that the sweeping changes to labor agreements happened with past agreements in terms of contributions to health insurance and retiree health insurance and those things. So the total four-year cost on an all-funds basis is $15 million, and it's just under $12 million for the general fund only. From a funding standpoint, there's a conservative surplus projected for the current year of $6.3 million that will more than cover the increased costs for the signing bonus for the current fiscal year. The financial plan includes approximately $2.1 million in total cumulative increases for this union over the 4 years of the financial plan, with the remainder in the contingency reserve, which, as we discussed, this financial plan includes unsettled labor contracts within contingency reserves over the financial plan. It doesn't add to the fund balance usage, but it is part of the fund balance usage that was planned for. Key contract provisions: there are 4% raises in the first 3 years of the contract and a 3% raise in year 4. Longevity payments are increasing by $75 annually. I already spoke about the signing bonus. In addition, there are upgrades to various positions with an average increase of $5,681 for the title upgrades. The Executive Director of Security is now scoped out and will become an exempt position. All other security officers continue to be represented by this union.
So was the Director of Security, was that done through the normal process with the union to take title work out of the bargaining unit? Do we know?
It's part of the written labor
It's part
contract.
of the agreement?
Mhm.
Okay, that's what it is.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, where did I leave off? Okay. So this is the third largest union. The cost for the current fiscal year for the signing bonus is approximately $500,000. The surplus more than covers that. The cumulative financial impact in the general fund after considering costs previously built into the plan is $8.1 million, and again, there are no savings associated with it, as those have been built into previous contracts. With respect to our summary finding comments, the district provided an outline of how the successor CBA net costs could be addressed. The outline, it doesn't provide planned budget reallocations, but a listing of what could happen, primarily moving around the contingency reserve. And the district has identified sufficient funding resources to address the current fiscal year and the prospective costs. When I was putting these comments together, I would like to add a recommendation to this report that's not in there right now. And my recommendation would be to take the physical financial plan and make the changes to the physical financial plan. So show the labor costs going up for this union over the financial plan, show the reduction in the contingency reserve. So we know it at this table, but other interested parties might not be aware of the changes going on to the financial plan. So in order to be fully transparent, that would be my recommendation.
Do you know what the average salary is for this bargaining unit?
Nathan would know.
Nathan would know. I'm sorry.
No,
I shouldn't
I
have asked.
know. He got,
He got sick tonight.
he got sick today,
So
yes.
if he's watching this out there live, we hope you get better.
It's, as of 2/17/22, $51,600.
Okay, thank you.
Andy, the answer was the average salary is roughly 51,000. Yes.
So, okay. Is there any discussion, questions to the report? Thanks, Jeanette, for your report.
You're welcome.
Let's see. So,
Could you do a motion to approve the report
That's
with the
what-
added recommendation?
yes, I will do that. So,
Thank you.
I am going to ask for a motion to approve as amended with the additional recommendations. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
With the recommendation
Yeah.
to make the budget reflect.
Right.
Right, which ultimately is going to simply be showing the use of the fund balance,
And
getting
some
allocated
balance.
out into the various lines for the contract, right?
Second the motion.
Second, okay. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion passes. Is there any new business?
Oh, we have one item
We
left.
do have another item. Did I miss something?
That's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, I did. I'm just moving too quickly. The final item of business is to affirm the recommendation of the Audit, Finance, and Budget Committee to approve the BFSA's 2022-2023 budget and the 2023-2026 financial plan. This document is included under tab 1 of your board book. The accompanying draft resolution is under tab 5. May I have a motion to approve that as recommended by the committee?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion passes. It's because we did it earlier. I just sort of skipped over it,
Right.
not having to do it a second time.
Right.
Is there any new business? Would anyone from the audience want to address the board, which is our practice? No? Okay. Thank you, and thank you, everybody, for coming and doing that. This concludes the meeting of the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.